Number 10. Wonder Woman and Spider-Man. Now I didn't fall and hit my head, nor am I just some fake nerd girl noob. These two met in the sequel, spiritual sequel to Spider-Man and Superman's first team-up. In their first team-up, they fought Lex Luthor and Doc Ock, who had kidnapped their ladies and also were planning to blow up the Earth. So this first team-up was Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man, and the sequel is just Superman and Spider-Man. Just them hanging out. It was bigger with more heroes and Doctor Doom flaunting his diplomatic immunity. However, at one point during this, Spider-Man ended up meeting Wonder Woman and basically his brain melted and he went va-va-voom, so much woman, and just hit on her constantly. Meanwhile, she had bought into the media hype by the Bugle that he was essentially a supervillain. And so the two fought, but they sorted it out quickly. He still hits on her for the rest of it though. I can imagine Wonder Woman being one of the many heroes who find Spider-Man annoying. So this is low, cause the hate was brief, bright, and then over. Mostly I just wanted to tell you this happened. It's one of my fave crossovers, mostly because Doom and Superman have a really deep conversation about the responsibilities about walking the earth as essentially a god. Friends, who knew? Number 9. Bishop and Gambit. So Bishop was really convinced for a time that Gambit was the traitor he was looking for who had betrayed the X-Men and led to their downfall and hence the dystopian future that he came from. So why did he think this? Well, Bishop was born and raised in this future and he was taken in by a man named LeBeau, which we know to be Gambit, Remy's last name. The man who raised him was also known as the Witness, the last person to have seen the X-Men alive. Later, Bishop would come across a recording of Jean Grey who said the X-Men had been destroyed by a traitor on the inside, which led him to suspect the Witness. When he traveled back in time and met the X-Men, he came to believe that Gambit was a younger version of the Witness and fought him, and proceeded to attempt to warn anyone who would listen about him, and also just give him side-eye constantly. Gambit of course responded in kind. No one likes being accused of potential future crimes. You hear that, Carol? No one. It would later come out that Gambit was not a traitor, so these two would squash their beef. Number 8. Guy Gardner and Fire. This occurred during their time on the JLI, the Justice League International. So Guy used to be really nice, up until he received brain damage fighting Sinestro. When the writers brought him back, they felt they had to do something to cure what they called his terminal blandness, which is harsh. So they gave him a brash, rude new toot. But since it was the result of brain damage by comic logic, if he got conked on the head again, it could just be reversed. And that's what happened. Then him and Ice, the best friend of Fire, started going out. Best friend in quotes, there's some hints there about other things going on. However, when he reverted back to his now established Guy ways, she wasn't into that. But she felt that she had seen the true man and hence was motivated to stay with him, even though he frequently embarrassed her or made her uncomfortable. This made Fire not like Guy very much at all. And while he didn't appreciate her butting into his relationship, this would all be solved, including the eventual Superman Guy Ice triangle, by Ice dying. That's one way to end a feud. The writers would later go on to say that her death was a mistake, an attempt at drama that fell flat. Number 7. Black Widow and Black Widow. While when most think of Black Widow, they think of Natasha Romanoff, there is another. This second Black Widow is Yelena Belova. While she and Nat would become allies, they started off as actual enemies. Both of them were raised and trained in the Red Room, and Yelena felt that she was the one who should hold the title of Black Widow, not Natasha. Nat would eventually have to use manipulation to make Yelena see that being the Black Widow was not this amazing pinnacle to aspire to. These two would, as I said, eventually get along, but it was a really rocky start, with Yelena viewing Natasha as a traitor, and the latter seeing the former as deluded. I'm gonna introduce Yelena to the MCU, so I have a question. How many of you are Yelena fans, or even knew about her? Small random test sample survey, go. Number 6. Storm and Emma Frost. Emma and Storm have beef, and Storm gets along with Doom, so that's saying something. Although, is it? Lots of people get along with Doom. Doctor Strange stayed at his castle with him when they went to rescue Doom's mom, and they had a nice time, at least it seemed like it. They had a nice dinner. I want to have dinner with Doom. So when Emma was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, she tortured Storm, trying to force information from her mind. Emma even pulled the, I don't want to hurt you, I want us to be friends. So obviously, when Emma joined the team and would later rise to a role of leadership within it, a role that Storm has herself occupied at points, the best points in my opinion, she would clash with Storm. Also, Emma gives her grief for being royal and is all, Your Highness? You were the White Queen of a supervillain club. These two have fought multiple times and Emma has lost. So you can write these two as cordial, but I don't know, I like their kind of drama. A little friction is fun, not everyone should get along perfectly. It's okay for some characters to not let everything go. Number 5. The Hulk and the Thing, halfway through with a classic battle. Many fans will remember these big brawls between the Hulk and the Thing. Fun fact, the Hulk was actually inspired by the success of the Thing in the Fantastic Four. Fans very much have a let them fight mentality. The Hulk freaks Ben out. Classic Hulk, that is, with how brainless and mindless he is. It's like looking into an uncomfortable funhouse mirror, because they are so similar. Early Hulk hated most people, Hulk smash and all that. But these two would eventually become friends, and it's sweet. Ben needs more friends. Friends who don't turn him into rock monsters. It's understandable why people still think they hate each other though. They just fought again the other day in a fight that made me cringe for the Thing. He got so hurt and it looked so painful. The rock part came off and it exposed his fleshy underbelly. This looked really painful. Number 4. Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. Yes, Emma made the list twice. Look, a lot of people have problems with her. Take it up with them. This is again because of Emma's time as a villain. Kitty met her for the first time when she was young and Emma had imprisoned them, and she never forgot it and hasn't really forgiven. Kitty finds Emma to be cold, cruel, and manipulative and doesn't trust her. She's made sure that she can best her, and Emma is a little afraid of her. I mean, you should be afraid of someone who hates you so passionately and openly. But sometimes Emma has proved her right. On Emma's side, she's a bit colder about it, but it's hard to like someone who hates you and makes such a loud show of it, also rips your heart out. Their fights are really cool though. Phasing fights are always great, and then you add a psychic element to that and you've got a great matchup. Number 3. The Punisher and Batman. Yes, another crossover. The Punisher and Batman have met, teamed up, and hated almost every second of it, and I'm pretty sure you can guess why. They pretty much have the polar opposite philosophies when it comes to how to handle crime. Punisher's is, well, bullet to the head, and Batman's is reformation. Take them to Arkham. They can all be saved. I won't become what they are. This all came to a head when Batman actually saved the Joker from Punisher. He got in between them, between the Punisher, the gun, and Joker, and then told the Joker to run for his life. Frank fights him for a bit at first, but then just becomes so disgusted with him that he tells him that him and the Joker deserve each other and just leaves. Ouch. Batman on his side thinks the Punisher is unhinged and belongs in Arkham. Punisher / Batman Deadly Nights was a good read. Number 2. The Darkness and Witchblade. Yes, we're leaving Marvel and DC for a moment. I know, it's a September 26th miracle. I filmed it that day. What kind of miracle is it? Whenever you're watching it, it's that day's miracle. So the Witchblade is actually conceived as the result of a truce liaison between the Darkness, a cosmic entity, and Angelus, the embodiment of God's light, whom the Darkness resents for bringing life into the empty chaos that had been its domain. The Darkness would begin inhabiting human hosts as time went on, passing itself down through a chosen bloodline, always male. He would still bear the grudge against Angelus and manifest that in his attitude to those who wielded the Witchblade. Their confrontations are violent, dangerous, and at times oddly sexual, because Witchblade is, if you've seen Witchblades, a lot. It's an intriguing relationship that will span all of time, played out through human hosts. Number 1. Cyclops and Wolverine. All of you from part 1 were like, Sasha, Cyclops and Wolverine hate each other? Everyone knows this. And yes, they do. But they were on rivalries. But yes, this has crossed the line into hate on more than one occasion, and is part of what people know about them, so they deserve to be on here too. How do they hate each other? Let me count the ways. They were fighting over the same woman, yes, but that's only part of it. A small part. They have fundamentally different personalities, and even with her gone, they still fight with each other. Scott is uptight and wound so tight he could snap, and he does sometimes. He leads through countermeasures, so oftentimes as an opposing force rather than an inspiring one. He kowtows to authority and loves rules and order. Wolverine is a much more free agent, driven by passion, thumbing his nose at authority, and is softer than he would first appear on the surface. He also feels that Scott is a bit of a hypocrite. This is cause when push comes to shove, Cyclops is usually pretty happy to let Wolverine do the things that he can't. Here's the thing, these two can also be friends. It's a weird dynamic where just a few things would need to shift and they'd be a terrifying, unstoppable duo. So it's probably a good thing most of the time that they can't see their way clear to that. Number 10. Lil Batman. Starting off with a fun one from the Superman / Batman team-up series that began in 2003. So in this story, all of a sudden, there are little chibi versions of the characters running around. This was issue 51. Superman also meets a little Superman, and they're all very over-the-top caricatures of their original personalities. Like, Lil Batman is super angry and gruff, and I like to imagine he has this high-pitched version of a Christian Bale growl. And the Superman one is really enthusiastic and peppy. So this whole plot is zany up until the characters, because we end up with a whole chibi league fight their chibi villains and they end up getting hurt. Because, well, in the main verse, cartoon logic doesn't rule. It turns out this is all being orchestrated by Batmite and Mr. Mxyzptlk, and well, it all works out alright in the end. They get back to their universe and they're okay. I will never stop recommending opening the 2003 Batman and Superman run. It was so fun. Number 9, the Justice Lords. Let's pop on over to the DCAU, that's the DC Animated Universe, to a time when the Justice League met their evil alternates, not the Crime Syndicate, but rather the Justice Lords. And Superman had a great extra costume, was lobotomizing people. So this universe was prompted after the death of their Flash, who is very much the heart of the team in the DCAU. His pep and optimism made him an integral part of the Core. This was Wally, by the way. Part of the almost 25 years that Wally was the Flash while Barry was dead. For a whole new generation of fans coming up during the start of the superhero adaptation renaissance, he was the Flash. So the Justice Lords catch wind of the main verse in the DCAU and feel that they're just letting their world fall to pieces. So they come over to impose their own brand of order. Which, after seeing how many lobotomies and militias and martial laws it takes to make that happen, the regular Justice League is not there for it. So yeah, they met their alternate versions and weren't here for it at all. How would you feel if your alternates were dystopian overlords? Like, I wouldn't approve, but at the same time I would like to see the costumes, because the evil variant costumes are always so good. The best costumes. I'm moving my hands so much because somebody said to stop, and I'm like, no, I talk how I want. We'll vogue through the whole video now. Number 8, Captain America and Hydra Cap. This is mostly on here because I like how complicated it is to explain, and I refuse to let that new narrative they're pushing take hold that Hydra Cap was the alternate Cap. Nah fam, that's the way they retconned it. Originally how this worked was that the entire timeline shifted, and young Cap, or rather newly young Cap because he was old, was classic Cap, and he had lived his life always as a Hydra agent, so he was always Cap. So yeah, the Cap who is now Cap, who the Cosmic Cube drew from the other timelines past, is from another timeline now. He's not classic Cap, that's now Hydra Cap. But we're gonna go with the he was the real Cap all along because, well, that's how the story really should have unfolded. Making Hydra Cap always Cap was guaranteed to increase the backlash on a story that was already gonna ruffle some feathers. When you're working on a legacy character, it's not all about you and your vision, it's also about keeping the character recognizable and blending those two things together. Because you're not gonna be writing that character forever, someone else will take it over. And people are gonna, in theory, be reading the character in ongoing fashion, so it needs to feel at least slightly cohesive. Anyway, the Cap we want came back and beat up Hydra Supreme so hard his costume flew off. Number 7, Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne. They're both Batman accounts. One of the emotional moments to come from Flashpoint, I mean aside from Barry getting to see his mom again, was that Thomas Wayne, who was Batman in that universe because it was Bruce who died in the alley, got to talk to his son when he learned that his son had a life in another universe. So he took the time to write him a letter that he then gave to Barry to give to him when he fixed the timeline, and by fixed I mean gave us the New 52. So maybe he should just stay there and let Atlantis and Themyscira destroy the world. Which is really harsh, it wasn't that bad. And Bruce got to get a letter from his dad, and it was really sweet, and he cried. He's also hung out with his dad lately in the Tom King run. That's all I have to say about that. Number 6, Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen. Spider-Man has met many alternate versions of himself thanks to the Spider-Verse, Spider Totems, etc. There are many meetings one could choose from here, so I'm saving some in case there's a part 2. No blanket Spider-Man for me. Spider-Gwen debuted in the Edge of Spider-Verse storyline and became one of the breakout alternate Spideys due in no small part to her costume, which is still one many fans adore. She came from a universe where Gwen was bitten by the spider and not Peter, who died. So obviously when she met so many Peters, including Mainverse Peter, the feelings were high. So in the run at the time of this recording, she's splitting her time between her universe and the main 616 verse. Why? Cause they want stuff to happen in the main continuity. Spider-Gwen was having a thing with Miles too. So many Spideys, alternate Spideys meeting each other everywhere. Number 5, the Deadpool Core. Of course Deadpool has a whole core of alternate versions of himself. He would, and he did. This series was all about alternate versions of Deadpool coming together to create a super group, the pooliest group they could be. You've got Lady Deadpool, Headpool, Kidpool. It was all as zany and madcap as you would imagine. Oh, and Dogpool, gotta remember Dogpool. Of all the characters to meet alternate versions of themselves, it falls the most in line for Deadpool, what with his fourth wall breaking antics and the like. If anybody should have a core of themselves, it's him. Number 4, Nightwing and Deathwing. I just love saying Deathwing. It sounds so extra. Deathwing. So Deathwing is a version of Dick from a future timeline where he married Donna, and they had a son who became evil, a supervillain named Lord Chaos. I hope he went evil young because there is no other excuse for that name. Lord Chaos. Deathwing would end up joining the Titans in the past when a mission takes them to the new Teen Titans present. Yes. 0 Hour erased this timeline, but not Deathwing, and then later he was retconned to not be Dick Grayson cause Deathwing, a lot of things happened there. He also ended up being a rapist after he became corrupted by a dark version of Raven. And you know how comics feel about their characters being tied to questionable actions. Unless you're an anti-hero, it doesn't fly. Say it with me now. The Phoenix was a force. Parallax was a fear entity. Number 3. Gwenpool and Everyone. Gwenpool debuted as a variant cover on Deadpool's Secret Wars. And is she Deadpool? Yes, but no. Is she Gwen? Yes, but no. Who is she? She's a character created because cosplayers really liked her costume. Her name is literally Gwenpool. People get confused about who she is though, and that makes sense because she looks like Gwen, but she's wearing a pink Deadpool costume and she breaks the fourth wall like there's no tomorrow. She doesn't even believe in the fourth wall. So if you're not following everything closely, being confused makes a lot of sense. She's met Deadpool and Gwen, and she is just, well, anywhere she wants to be in the Marvel Universe at the moment. Her official canon backstory currently, they're saying they're gonna retcon it, is that she's a comic book fan from our world who got sucked into comics. There's a miniseries at the time of this recording, it's promising big things, which always scares me. Number 2. Reed Richards and the Maker. So nice guy dad Reed, current canon Marvel Reed, and the evil Reed from the former Ultimate Verse, Earth 1610. I guess I should add sexy dad? The comics really want me to think that, so for accuracy I guess Dill? Oh god. Reed and the Maker met before the Maker went full villain. In fact, they were working together to take on God Emperor Doom, but they had vast differences in opinion about what to do. Reed found that he had far more of a moral streak to uphold than the Maker, who wanted to kill Doom and all their enemies. He would eventually try to kill Reed, and he now haunts the Prime Earth. He's still alive. The Maker is Reed with all humanity stripped away, and he actually freaked Reed out. The Maker is really intimidating, and I love it. Evil Reed. Check him out in Absolute Carnage, and not sponsored I swear. Just some of the panels there, how he's drawn, it's really disturbing. And number 1, Flash of Two Worlds. Number 1 has to go to the story that started it all. The story that started the whole multiverse when the Golden Age and Silver Age Flashes met for the first time in 1961. When Barry Allen, the Flash, vibrates his molecules in a way he hasn't previously, he finds himself in Keystone City rather than Central City, the home of the Golden Age Flash. This is Jay Garrick, and when he meets him, he's older. And in Barry's world, he's a comic book character who had retired when his comic book series had been cancelled on that Earth. So on his Earth, he retired when the comic was cancelled on Barry's. There you go. The two would team up, and this would be the establishment of Earth 2, which would become a world of Golden Age heroes and plot lines. And this Earth 2 would span into more Earths, many more team-ups, and many more crossovers. It could be said that all the other numbers on this list owe a little something to the Flash of Two Worlds. In the early days, characters would traverse between these two Earths, some even coming to live there permanently, like Black Canary. You would go to Earth 1 though, you didn't go to Earth 2. Still, eventually it would all get convoluted, and DC would try to compress the universes with Crisis on Infinite Earths, only to bring it back years later with Infinite Crisis. Now there's negative multiverses and Apex Lex and all kinds of things. Apex Lex, it's fun to say. Well, here's Apex. 8-pack Lex.
Number 10. Hawkeye and Winter Soldier. Hawkeye and Winter Soldier are forced to team up in the Tales of Suspense. Both seem to be on the case of tracking down Natasha, aka Black Widow, or someone who is acting as her copycat and killing off Hydra agents, as Natasha is supposed to be dead. It turns out that they are right and that she did die, but also she came back as a clone. Always clones. Turns out the Red Room made copies of her in case she was ever killed, and that they do this so they never truly lose an agent. This is that awful clone thing I'm always talking about in videos, if you remember that, in regards to Black Widow. Black Widow ends up getting her memories restored by a bear. Yes, you heard right, a bear. Natasha comes up with a plan to take down the Red Room, but tries to keep Clint and James out of it, as she knows they'll only get in her way. The two continuously bicker in this saga, and when Clint first runs into Bucky, he actually introduces him by confessing that he kind of hates him. Although it's odd because this is never really fully explained as to why they both don't really like each other. I guess it's because they both dated Black Widow, like they're both her exes, or just because maybe they're very different people. They both put up with each other long enough to complete their mission, and then pretty much immediately part ways. Number 9. Catwoman and Zatanna. Zatanna did a mind wipe of Dr. Light, and as such had to mind wipe Batman because he ran in and tried to stop her while she was in the middle of it. Being a powerful magic user has its consequences. You can do great things, powerful things, but you know, people are going to judge you for it. When what she had done came to light, pun not intended there, Batman especially was pretty upset with her. His trust had been broken, and his friendship with Zatanna had been ruined. Granted, he still wanted to work with her. When Catwoman found out that Zatanna had also tampered with her mind, and as such changed the entire direction of her life, well, she was beyond livid. She didn't want to hear Zatanna out, who had come to confess and apologize. She wanted to just move on, and when that didn't seem possible, she wanted to fight. Zatanna says to Catwoman, "I understand why you hate me," but Catwoman responds, "Hate is a strong word, Zatanna, and it's not even close to strong enough to describe what I think of you." Woo! Number 8. Tim Drake and Azrael. Really, I could also include Nightwing in there too, as both Robins were not a fan of Azbat. Azrael took up the Batman mantle after Bruce had his back broken by Bane in the events of Nightfall. Bruce decided to leave the mantle in Jean-Paul's capable hands, but becoming Batman drove Jean-Paul to madness. Tim disagrees with the fact that Azrael kills criminals that he goes up against, and he says as much to him, which gets them in a fight. Azrael even feels bad whenever he loses his temper with Robin, but Tim just feels like he is a dangerous, ticking time bomb. When Bruce came back and saw that Gotham seemed to be fairly free of crime, as free of crime for Gotham as anyone can expect anyways, he expressed leaving Azbat in the role and retiring from the vigilante life. Tim was amazed and confessed that Azbat had killed. Later, Nightwing also got involved and the three decided that Azrael needed to be stopped. Bad Azbat. Number 7. Batman and Guy Gardner. The hatred between these two goes back to the old days of the Justice League International. Guy constantly nagged Batman, who was leading the league, trying to get more authority from him, but was always briskly denied by the Bat. And one day, Guy decided he had had enough of Bruce's leadership. Guy thought he should lead the league and challenge Batman to a fight to prove himself. He swore he could take on Batman in hand-to-hand combat without the power of his ring. This resulted in what is commonly referred to as the One Punch event. Batman took Guy Gardner down with one swift punch to the face, causing Blue Beetle to exclaim, "One punch! One punch!" Ever since that day, and obviously even before that, the two have never gotten along. Number 6. Bishop and Cable. These two have worked alongside one another before, but the events of the Messiah Complex changed their relationship entirely. The first baby since the events of House of M with the X gene is born, and the race is on for all the groups to try and steal it. Two players in this strange game of Pass the Mutant Baby are Bishop and Cyclops. The two of them have different beliefs as to what should be done with the baby. Bishop wants to kill her, as in his future she grows up to be the one who kills thousands of people, which causes the mutant concentration camps to exist. Cable wants to save her, as in his future she unites all of man and mutant kind. The two beliefs on what the mutant messiah represents dramatically divide the two mutants from different futures. In the end, Cable ends up with her and takes her to the future. He names her Hope after his deceased wife, and she grows up to become mutant Hope Summers. No baby for you, Bishop. No baby for you. Number 5. Miss Marvel and Rogue. These two have been on better terms with one another lately, but their hatred was fairly long-lasting. It was also mostly one-sided. I find a good amount of hate in the comics between the heroes actually is one-sided. It's like someone wants to apologize and the other person just doesn't want to hear it. Rogue basically touched Carol Danvers for too long and ended up draining or absorbing more of her powers than she had intended. She also ended up taking Carol's memories in the process, leaving her a shell of her former self. Miss Marvel went to the X-Men and more specifically Professor Xavier for help, and they took her in and did their best to help her in recovery. This is actually where Rogue gets her constant ability to fly. Rogue eventually reformed and joined up with the X-Men. She had stolen Carol's powers during her time with the Brotherhood, and she actually felt bad about what she had done, but also she felt somewhat annoyed as she had to live with a piece of Carol constantly inside her mind. The two women have since made up, with Carol offering forgiveness to Rogue after saving her. Though Rogue did try to absorb Carol's powers again in Avengers vs. X-Men, which did not land well with Carol, but then she became Captain Marvel, and now she's over it. She's got her own stuff going on. Now everyone hates her anyways. Number 4. Damian Wayne and Tim Drake. Two Robins that have had a hard time getting along with others. Ergo, it is unsurprising that they both have a hard time getting along with one another. In Tim Drake's defense, he did try to befriend Damien when they first met, only to have Damien try to kill him. Needless to say, from there, Tim was riding that hate train pretty hard, even going so far as to attack Damien when he first shows back up at the manor, announcing that Ra's al Ghul has returned and is after him. Neither one trusts the other. Damien thinks Tim is unworthy and does not deserve to fight alongside his father, as he is not his rightful son. Tim just thinks Damien is a crazed assassin. And well, he sort of is. Number 3. Captain Marvel and She-Hulk. After the events of Civil War II, a lot of people were feeling some pretty strong hatred towards Captain Marvel. Where Iron Man was painted as the bad guy in the first Civil War between him and Cap, Captain Marvel had now stepped into being the bad guy in Civil War II, going up against Iron Man. While Iron Man obviously had some beef with Captain Marvel coming out of the event after he awoke from, the coma that she put him in, the two had been close before, so eventually they worked towards patching things up. She-Hulk had missed almost the entire entire event of Civil War II, except for the one event that instigated the divide. In that fight, however, she was knocked into a coma. When she awoke, she discovered that her cousin Bruce Banner, the Hulk, had been killed. Jennifer was shattered and ended up turning gray as a result. She primarily blamed Captain Marvel for this, as the one who believed in using Inhuman Ulysses' visions. Hawkeye believed that Bruce was about to transform into Hulk and unleash mass death and destruction, and mercifully killed him with an arrow to the head. Jennifer was fighting alongside Danvers before the events of Civil War, but the death of her cousin shattered their friendship. Number 2. Old Man Logan and Old Man Hulk. In the dystopian world of Old Man Logan's story, Bruce has pretty much lost his mind. He and his inbred brood of children and grandchildren are the Hulk Gang. Banner's children were sired by him and his cousin, She-Hulk, apparently. Ew. The Hulk Gang are the landlords of the town that Wolverine lives in with his partner and their children. Bruce is no longer the gentle giant he once strived to be. The gamma radiation has seemingly driven him mad. He and his brood demand payment from Old Man Logan. Logan agrees to help Hawkeye with a job in order to get the funds he needs for rent. Unfortunately, when he arrives back in town with the funds, he finds out he is too late. The Hulks got bored apparently and came over and killed his family. Logan then takes the fight to Banner, who when transformed is stronger than he's ever been. He devours Logan, but Logan gets him back in the end, regenerating within Hulk's stomach and then cutting his way out, killing Banner and avenging his family's death. Number 1. Black Widow and Hawkeye. Okay, so we have to go to an alternate universe for this one, but it still happened. The ultimate universe is where we're going, of course. In that universe, almost everyone hates Black Widow after she turns out to be a traitor. She and Iron Man are about to get married when she turns on him and kills Jarvis. She was the one behind the death of Hawkeye's family as well, and the kidnapping of Hawkeye. Fortunately, Tony Stark had just gifted her a suit of armor, which meant she had nanite implants, and unfortunately for Natasha, Tony had control of those implants, so he was able to knock her out and have her captured pretty much immediately. While Natasha was in the hospital, Hawkeye had escaped his captors and he came straight for her. He shot arrows through her hands and pinned her to the wall before putting an arrow right in her skull. No one messes with Hawkeye's family, and you definitely do not want to be on his hate list.
Number 10. She-Hulk vs. She-Hulk, the meta trial. Starting off with a bit of a reach to get warmed up, we have Jennifer Walters facing off against the different versions of herself, but most notably, the more traditionally beautiful or pinup She-Hulk, and her angry like She-Hulk, the Hulk one, who people call the ugly Hulk, but real talk, she's just buff and Hulk-like. Even this version is still drawn as relatively traditionally attractive, but I digress. This whole issue is a trial about the right to be ugly, and depending upon how you feel about representation in comics and escapism versus representation, the balance between, you could have had many reactions to this issue. And contrary to what you've probably heard, that doesn't make you a good or bad person or a better or worse fan. It makes you a person with an opinion, just like everybody else. In my opinion, it's an interesting discussion to have, and a topic that in the past has even been handled with humor, such as with the Hawkeye initiative, where sexy covers were redrawn with sexy Hawkeye. But it is also an argument that is often made in an isolated bubble, separate from other context, or with a focus on the real world and not the fictional canonical one. Which is how you can then have Jen calling Bruce Banner, her cousin the Hulk, out for daring to be jealous of her. It was an interesting issue, it got people talking. I definitely won't forget it anytime soon. Number 9. Batman and Owlman. Whenever people talk about this, you're most likely going to see a versus in the title. Let them fight is the name of the game when it comes to Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne Jr. There have been multiple depictions of Owlman thanks to DC's many universe shifts, and most of them have met Bruce Wayne. The New 52 version was heavily involved in the Court of Owls, and was from the Prime Earth, so he doesn't count. We need our crime syndicate buddy from Earth 3, otherwise known as the Reverse Earth back in the day. Batman has had to fight Owlman on more than one occasion, but always seems to find it a little disturbing. That cold methodology, so calculatingly applied to crime instead of heroism. It's enough to make you think, or it would be if they didn't do an Elseworld story about it every other week. To which I say, keep them coming. Number 8. Tim Drake and Savior. Yes, some love for the third Robin, Tim Drake, who now has middle child syndrome over at DC, and is as a result often forgotten. While he has an alternate future version who became Batman for a time, even though Tim had vowed that that was something he would never do. There's a whole alternate timeline here with Bruce dying, killed by Batwoman for reactivating Brother Eye, his super paranoid AI network cause, you know, his friends mind wiped him, cause he didn't want to mind wipe someone else, even if they were a villain. The older Tim and young Tim would meet, which would cause old Guy gun-wielding Tim to realize that time could be changed, which paradoxically ended up with him attacking Tim and not working with him. His quest through time would eventually see him turn into Savior. He had a cool arc during the Super Sons, which was just a good comic in general. Wholesome fun. Even Savior. Number 7. Thor vs. Eric Masterson. Eric Masterson was Thor for a bit. Let me explain. So Eric Masterson met Thor while Eric was working as an architect, and through some shenanigans ended up accompanying Thor over to the Black Galaxy, where he was mortally wounded by Mongoose. So he was given Thor's form, so they merged, then split, then re-merged. Then Thor was banished and Eric was transformed into Thor. Eric's demise was quite dramatic. It occurred after he was going by Thunderstrike, and well, he had to give into a curse from his blood axe to defeat Seth. But then he was on the warpath, so Thor eventually had to stop him. Fun fact, Eric was Thor during the Infinity Gauntlet stuff. He was bearded Thor. Eric was alright. I mean, no Thor other than Thor is real Thor. I mean, it is his name. But if my name somehow became a title, heck yeah, I'd want to be the coolest person using it. My name will not be a title. Number 6. Thor Core. More Thor in at number 6 with a whole core. So during Secret Wars, while Doom was God Emperor, he decided that the best course of action was to set up a group made up of high-powered individuals from across Battleworld. This was as a kind of police force. So to become a member of the Thor Core, you had to be able to wield Mjolnir, and you had to look good in a helmet. Just kidding, it's just the hammer thing. So they served Doom without question, and you have all these different versions of Thor on one team, hanging out, chilling, maxing, relaxing, all cool. The Thor Core would end up joining the rebellion against Doom later on, and probably were destroyed when the big climax happened with Reed and the Molecule Man. Number 5. Old Man Deadpool and Young Pool, or regular Pool. Halfway through with the Deadpool and Spidey team-up comic, and the arc from the second half of the book after veteran Deadpool writer Joe Kelly, who had penned the first arc, left. So this second arc involved time travel and an old version of Deadpool and Spider-Man being transported to the past, all because of an AI built by Peter's parents, who get more and more busy by the retcon, I tell you. Older Spidey and Deadpool were good friends, a fact that brought younger Deadpool much joy, even if he was jealous that his future self knew Peter's secret identity, which he would later learn sorta. The book got cancelled at issue 50, which is like a decent number for a team up in the modern era, but it just meted out hard, with them arresting the writer, him seeing Peter's face but it was blank. Yeah. Number 4. Future Flash and Blue Flash. Ah, Barry. So many time-traveling Flash stories, including Barry. This of course led to him meeting his future self, the Future Flash, or Blue Flash, which was a look. So Future Flash was from 20 years in the future where Wally had been killed by a bunch of rogues. So Barry, driven mad by guilt, has dedicated himself to building up enough speed so that he can go back in time and stop this from happening. Cause that's who Barry is post-Flashpoint. Timelines there for mere mortals. Barry will change them as he so pleases. So Barry is convinced his more depressing future can only be averted by saving Wally, and this leads him to murdering his rogues in an attempt to gain more speed. He would end up traveling back, doing battle with present Barry, who had a more sober way of looking at the timeline. So Future Flash ended up being stuck in the past, like the Reverse Flash. Time travel doesn't work out well for these Flashes. That's what you get when you get off the treadmill. Number 3. Young X-Men meet the old X-Men. This was an entire arc, the classic original X-Men team being pulled forward in time to meet the hot mess that was their present selves. Their book was confusingly called All New X-Men, so timeline. Cyclops has escaped from prison and is on his way to becoming what fans would call Mutant Hitler. The other X-Men can't move against him, and Iceman is all, oh man, past Scott would never, which Beast takes as challenge accepted, and goes back in time to get the young X-Men by being like, hey, so your older selves either not the best or out to lunch, come help, please. The young X-Men would end up staying in the present timeline for quite a while until people demanded that they be sent back. It was confusing and convoluted, especially for those who weren't following closely. Most of the young X-Men who met their present versions weren't impressed, especially Cyclops. He was flat out disgusted by what had become of Scott, killing Professor X and all that. Shame. Number 2. Harley Quinn and other Harleys. We talked last time about the idea of multiple Harley Quinns, and this has been played with more than once in the main DC universe. I almost said metaverse, but I won't let Doomsday Clock correct me like that. In the New 52, Harley was believed to have met alternate versions of Harleys, when Joker showed her a mass grave of women all wearing her costume in a dungeon. People like to cite the New 52 as a kind of barometer, to be like, look at how bad their relationship is. Okay, look, the New 52 should not be used as a barometer for anything. Remember jeans and t-shirt Clark Kent Superman? Also, Harley killed a whole block full of kids in that universe. Harley has also met copycats who want to be the crazed girlfriend of the Joker, women inspired by her. She is pretty much never impressed. I mean, why have a copy when you can have the original? Number 1. Superman and New 52 Superman. Of all the changes to characters made in the New 52, Superman's was one of the most jarring. He started off quite different, harsher, more distant, wearing jeans, scenes, and it was one of the more consistent complaints you would hear from most people that Superman didn't feel like Superman, and that bled into all the other things that happened, even his relationship with Wonder Woman, though some liked it, although she was a bit OC too. Eventually, New 52 Superman was phased out. In the storyline, The Final Days of Superman, we were given back OG Superman with a beard, and he was married to Lois and had a son. The two would go on an actually really heartfelt journey together that would really give credit to both Superman and what they stood for. New 52 Superman also had to fight a Superman imposter. This was a really good finale for New 52 Superman. He would die heroically and dramatically with all his friends there to see him off. He would then later be replaced with Prime Superman, OG Superman, who would proceed to just kind of take over his life and pick up where he left off with his friends. That part was kind of awkward. It's just like how we don't think about how non-Hydra Cap is actually Cap from a separate timeline from the main verse. We let these things fade. Number 10. Batwoman and Cassandra Kane. Cassandra Kane is one of the women to take up the mantle of Batgirl after Barbara Gordon. Initially mute and trained from birth to be an assassin, she would find herself taken in by Batman and learning his code, and really being treated very much as a daughter. She would come to have great respect for the whole Bat family and what they stood for, so she's not here for people breaking their code. Enter Batwoman. The modern Batwoman is a new take on the first one. Both are named Kathy Kane. The first Batwoman, however, was created purely as a love interest to prove that Batman and Robin were no homo. When she came back, she was her own character, and a lesbian as an FU to seduction of the innocent. But she's also, post New 52, more set against the Bat family, all like, yeah, I took your symbol, your name, and your costume, but we have nothing to do with each other, also sometimes I'm your cousin. Sure, Jan. The thing with her is that she's far more open to killing, which set her against Cassandra for a bit, who had a full breakdown, crying about how their symbol that they wear means something, and how dare she disrespect it. And then Bruce gave Batwoman the most disappointed dad stare of all life. I love when characters have the conflict they should based on their personalities, instead of the whole, we're in the same group, we should stick together. Nah fam, give me interpersonal drama between the people who would have it. Number 9. Simon, Baz, and Batman. Speaking of codes and the like, why if it isn't Batman having words with yet another Green Lantern? Just he should write an angry letter to the Guardians. Please have Mogo pick better ring bearers, sincerely an angry vigilante who has to work with them. So when Simon first started, he was from a bit of a rougher area and had a bit more of an aggressive stance on what a Green Lantern could be. So he used to carry a gun. And well, you know how Batman felt about that. Batman has a big no-no for guns, unless it's the Snyderverse or Batman Odyssey or some other exceptions. So Batman was all, it's not necessary, and legit his trauma aside, it kinda isn't. I mean, you have a ring that can construct anything you can conceive of, and you could use it to be a gun if you really wanted it to be, so it's kinda redundant, but that's just me. Number 8. Rogue and Dazzler. Rogue and Dazzler have some classic beef from when Rogue was still a supervillain and she absorbed Dazzler's powers, which you know some people get over and others don't. But this feud would continue even after Rogue was on the X-Men, but it would morph into a kind of tramp, hussy shame-off of them calling each other names and who was hotter and who was dressed more like a trollop. It was a moment, that's for sure. I got called a tart the other day and was more taken aback by the throwback than anything else. Like, what's next? A dame? A broad? Dazzler is one of those interesting characters where she's been around for decades now and has had many arcs and plots, and yet some people outside of comics are still like, who? So do you like both serious life or death fights but also petty cat fights? Cause these two have both. Number 7. Rick Grayson and the Bat Family. My goodness, an actual chance to talk about Rick Grayson? Oh joy. So Rick Grayson is renamed Dick Grayson after he got shot in the head by the KG Beast and got amnesia. Afterwards, he couldn't remember who he was, but was suddenly filled with a Dan Didio-like certainty that his name shouldn't be Dick. And also, he didn't really want anything to do with the rest of the Bat Family. This is a split which has caused them great pain. Well, I mean, it would have bothered Bruce if he was in character, but he's too busy doing yoga on the beach. So despite not really wanting anything to do with his family, Rick is still a vigilante. In fact, there's a whole Nightwing group. Nightwing Gold, Nightwing Blue, Nightwing Red. Power Rangers assemble. So he's kinda in a Jason role right now, and maybe he'll be the new Talon, we'll see. Wake me up when the hate is over. Yes, it's one-sided, they all miss and love him. Poor Damien. His father abandoned him to go paddleboarding and grow a mustache, and his brother and father figure doesn't remember who he is. The name's Grayson. Rick Grayson. Number 6. Speaking of the Bat Family, we need some pre-New 52 drama with Jason Todd and Tim Drake. Jason Todd had a lot of strong feelings about Tim because, well, he was his replacement, or at least that's how Jason viewed it. He used to call Tim the Pretender, and he was out to hurt him as much as possible. He would actually shoot him in the knee or batarang him in the knee. There was serious knee injury. He took an arrow to the knee during the battle for the cowl. Tim should be permanently limping, thank goodness for comics. Tim started off not actively hating Jason, but after seeing the pain he was causing, plus being on the receiving end of Jason's at the time unhinged rage, responded in kind. These days, Tim and Jason have a better relationship, definitely eased by the fact that there is now an even newer Robin on the scene, Damien. Now him and Tim can bond. Jason was quite the big emotional catalyst when he first came back. Now he lives in a kinda limbo. People love him though. If you dare suggest anything bad about Jason, prepare for people to come for you, lock your doors, delete your search history. It's gonna get real intense. Number 5. Captain America and the Punisher. Midway through, we have some one-sided and kinda sad but understandable hate. The Punisher really admires Captain America, which is understandable. A lot of people in the Marvel Universe do. But Captain America, he is not here for Frank's methods, his brutality, his killing, his unwillingness to forgive, any of it. They had a really awkward fight in Civil War 1, wherein the Punisher didn't fight back when him and Steve fought. That always makes the aggressor look terrible. The sad man is a great defense tactic, gets the crowd on your side. There was also a what if story wherein Frank Castle was chosen to be Captain America over Falcon. For reasons. After Steve lost an arm, and that was apparently beyond the pale, they needed a whole new Cap. Metal arms are for anti-heroes, and Thor. Cap would find a way to convince Frank to change his ways in that story, but in main verse that is yet to occur. And it won't. A well-adjusted Punisher? He'd be cancelled. Number 4. Raven and the Justice League. Silly Justice League, not trusting people just cause they're an interdimensional portal for their monster destroyer world's father. Stop sipping on all that haterade. No matter the iteration, the Justice League is always at first wary of Raven. She's powerful and if unhinged could destroy the whole world, or prove to be the means for her father to do so. Raven doesn't hate the Justice League really, especially not in the new Teen Titans, but she will defend herself when push comes to shove. And there was an all-out battle between the two groups, Teen Titans and the League, because her father's influence did come through. So yeah, I understand why the League is concerned, but Raven works hard to not be evil, and most of the time it works. You know, unless it's Dick and Corey's wedding. Number 3. Rogue and the Scarlet Witch. Finally, Rogue having a problem with someone else and not the other way around. So back in the day, Wanda nearly erased all mutants from existence. I said back in the day, that wasn't that far back, but still. This was by uttering the phrase, "no more mutants." Mutants were on the run, hunted, it was a terrible time. And then a lot of the Marvel Universe just got over it, but not Rogue. Rogue doesn't forgive and forget quite so easily. And you know what else doesn't? House of X. It makes sense, especially with the new canon, that Wanda isn't a mutant, which hashtag not my Wanda, but I digress. Rogue has come for Scarlet Witch more than once over this, and Wanda will defend herself, but also she has a lot of guilt over this, but it's more of a gee, I should learn to wield magic better so I don't almost nearly commit another near genocide. Number 2. Captain America and the US Agent. Whenever I put the US Agent on a list, people come for me. How dare you, he saved my family, we have lunch every month, he's a real hero. But Captain America and the US Agent, there is friction there. The US Agent would actually take up Cap's mantle for a bit, but he believed in far more brutal and decisive measures than Steve ever had. And it got to the point where Steve had to come out of retirement and take the mantle back because he felt that John was abusing it and staining it, while John felt he was utilizing his position to the fullest potential and that Steve was weak and soft. Also, when John first was introduced, he was a Captain America villain called the Super Patriot. He's gonna be in the Disney Plus series, so get excited for that. And number 1. Cyclops and Captain America. Avengers vs. X-Men. What a time. So the plot. Cliff Notes time. The Phoenix Force has crashed on Earth, looking for Hope Summers as a host, because the Summers' children are the only ones who matter except when they don't. The X-Men and Avengers differ on what to do about the Phoenix Force. This is post No More Mutants, so Hope comes to be viewed as like a mutant messiah. Her and the Phoenix Force combined will heal mutants and save the species, while the Avengers think that the Phoenix Force will destroy the Earth, while Cyclops and Cap would be the ones who played out this conflict the most. And Cap's strict adherence to what the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted would burn a bridge between him and Cyclops, and also fuel that resentment in Scott. It's still there, and it would really start to crystallize his segregationist views that mutants and humans had separate interests, that humans couldn't be trusted, and that they should be separate. And well, Scott, he just rubs people the wrong way in general, so it's not hard to return the hate. Number 10. Zoom and Eobard Thawne. So there is more than one Reverse Flash. There are more than 2 Reverse Flashes. At first it was like each Flash had their Reverse Flash, but then it kind of evolved beyond that. Since, well, Thawne hates Barry, but not really Wally. So Wally was given his own horrifying Reverse Flash in Professor Zoom, made all the worse because Zoom was his friend, which always made all the things he did, like causing Wally's wife Linda to miscarry their first set of twins, particularly hurtful and horrifying. However, when Barry came back, so did his nemesis. So now there were multiple Reverse Flashes zooming around, bad pun fully intended. Well, these two met. Also, you're supposed to call them different things. Thawne is the Reverse Flash, and Hunter Zolomon is Zoom. Great name, Hunter's Owlman. So in comics, these two shared a brief exchange about teaming up, but then the New 52 happened, so none of it mattered. Another version of these characters appeared on the CW show, and while all Flashes are crossing paths there, so it's to be expected, I'd be more surprised to find a lone wolf Flash at this point. They're both really scary. People like to play the who is better of these Flashes games, but I wouldn't want to face either of them. Number 9. Harley Quinn's White Knight. So this one is low like our last number because this is two separate people, but they are set up as alternate versions in a way, and this Harley Quinn case is too intriguing not to discuss. In Sean Gordon Murphy's Batman White Knight, a reformed Joker is confronted with the fact that there are two Harleys, which in a metatextual context represents the different presentations of Harley Quinn over time. And if you're looking for a deconstruction of both versions and how they both have changed, both have merit, and why someone could prefer the classic depiction that doesn't descend into angry screeching and table flipping about co-signing abuse or there can be only one, then this is the comic for you. There can be only one. Highlander for life. One of Harley's strengths is the variety of discussions she opens up and the different types of tales that can be told, and this story takes advantage of all of that. Harley's early depictions have merit, people, as does tweaking it for better or worse. Nuance, my favorite thing. Layers, like an ogre. Read it. I will let you peel them back for yourself. Number 8. Spider-Man and Carnage Spider-Man from the 90s animated series. I don't care how janky the animation is by modern standards, it's still a decent show, story-wise. And it makes some good attempts at adapting some pretty complex plots. Plus, with all the characters that appear in it, some have dubbed it the first MCU. So one of its more lofty adaptation attempts was of the Clone Saga and also a Spider-Verse style finale featuring the Beyonder, wherein Peter had to team up with alternate versions of himself from across the multiverse to combat a crazed version of himself driven over the edge by the horror of his life and bonding with a Carnage symbiote. This Carnage Spidey was also pretty horrified when he could see past the symbiote's reasoning, that is, to what his life had become and what he was doing. So what was he doing? Say it with me now. Trying to destroy the multiverse. He would be swayed to try to stop his plan from meeting Uncle Ben, from a universe where he had survived, and yet Peter was still Spider-Man, but he was more like a Tony Stark Spider-Man, arrogant, rich, etc. None of the other ones liked him, his suit was silver, I don't know. This series was good, it's not just my nostalgia goggles, I swear. I only have those on for the theme, which is very aggressively 90s. Number 7. Stryfe and Cable. Clones count. They 100% count. A clone is another version of you, unless you splice it with someone else, like Lex did with Superboy. Then it's your scientific love child with your arch nemesis. So Stryfe is a clone of Cable from the dystopian, apocalyptic hellscape Cable was raised in. So this clone was hyper-aged to be the same age as Cable, and Apocalypse took him in assuming he was getting the real Cable, who he wanted to use as a host body. But well, when he found out it was just a clone, forget it. Only the prime bodies for Apocalypse. So Cable and Stryfe have faced off. It's not an odd occurrence for Cable. He's fought Nate Gray as well, the X-Man. Being aged up, down, being older than his dad, besties with Deadpool, it's all in a day's work for Cable. Number 6. Crisis on Two Earths. So this movie, was from 2010, and it was yet another instance of the Justice League meeting the crime syndicate. So this was Justice League, Crisis on Two Earths, and it had just the hottest Superwoman. Can we talk about Dina Torres' voice and just her? No? Well, just know that she's a goddess. This was a fun introduction to Earth 3, for those who may not have already been familiar with it. You got to see the good Luthor, Owlman, Ultraman, Johnny Quick. I would be so annoyed if I was Johnny Quick. Your alternate version is just a straight up verb and your name sounds like a breakfast cereal. It's always cool to see the Justice League go up against their alternates, and the crime syndicate are a cut above. Plus they have a lot of soap opera drama going on. It's a decent movie. Give it a watch if you have the time. Number 5. Dark Beast and Beast. So Dark Beast comes to us from the Age of Apocalypse storyline and was a mad scientist who had given in to his darkest nature because he was working for Mr. Sinister in his breeding pens. By the end of that storyline, he had managed to escape to the main reality, 616. It looked like he had died, but he had instead been cast back 20 years into the past, so now he was older than Mainverse Beast. This made him responsible for creating the Morlocks because he was cast back into the sewers, it was a thing. He would later kidnap Mainverse Beast, so that's one way to meet your alternate version. He would try to replace Beast on the X-Men, but found it hard to deceive them because Beast had a higher knowledge base than them, was also just better at interacting with people. So to combat this, he started killing Beast's childhood friends, just stopping short of killing his parents. So yeah, suffice it to say, these two have beef. Dark Beast goes hard, except for killing parents. Genetic experimentation on kids? Fine. Killing your own parents? That's where the line is. I'm glad to know there is a line. Makes my villainy so much easier. Number 4. Doctor Doom and Future Doom. Doctor Doom is no stranger to time travel, dimension hopping, meeting alternate versions. It's all in a day's work. A week's work. A life's work. So when Doom and Iron Man were sent forward in time to 2093, where the world had reverted back to Arthurian times and legends and styles and just the whole 9 yards with a punk tech edge, so look forward to that, Doom met the future version of himself, and well, he was not impressed. He thought his future version was unworthy, relying too much on tech, and well, he just kept himself alive that way. He had allied with future Iron Man, Tony's descendant, and was getting around that way, and Doom was having none of it. Despite future Doom having a pretty credible grasp on the world, he was pretty impressive. Doom gives him a speech that basically boils down to dignity. Always dignity. And then kills him. You don't embarrass Doom, he can't handle it. Remember when Doom was hot in canon and only had like a tiny scar and that was why he wore the mask? I remember. Doom is vain about both his physical appearance and how he presents himself. Number 3. Thanos versus Thanos. Why yes, the Mad Titan has fought himself. Of course he has. I'd fight myself. Probably lose. Alternate me probably took the time to learn some form of fighting, probably fencing. That'd be cool. Thanos number 18 sees older Thanos fighting young Thanos. Is the older version of you an alternate version? I'd say yes, because you don't know if you'll ever end up in that future if we have free will and timelines and all that stuff, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. We're all changing on the journey of life. This was actually kinda sweet. So young Thanos has to kill old Thanos so he can achieve his dream of finally being with Death, who seems at this point in time ready to be with him. Just a heartfelt moment between tyrants and killers, you know, tugging at your heartstrings. Sure, years ago he snapped half the galaxy in a big temper tantrum, but does that mean he doesn't deserve love? Villains need love too. Just look at all our villains couple lists. What's the use of all that power and money if you have no one to abuse it with? Number 2. Kid Loki, Adult Loki, King Loki. So many Lokis. So Loki has existed in many forms. Classic Loki, crazed Loki, sexy female Loki, the first sexy Loki, Kid Loki, modern MCU-avized male hipster Loki. So Kid Loki was Loki Laufeyson, and old Loki was the more crazed version, and they've all met in the metaphysical space and talked. Old Loki killed Kid Loki. It's all been very dramatic. I mean, Kid Loki was on the Avengers and people liked him, and nobody's ever really a huge fan of Kid Death. Loki is much more than the MCU version, people. He has a rich history. Currently, because of the Disney Plus series, they're trying to make him cohesive in hopes of horizontal marketing. Even though, let's be real, there's not that much overlap between people who go watch things and people who turn around and read comics after because of it. They tend to be separate. It happens, but not in huge droves. And that's not a bad thing. Let comics be its own medium that stands on its own. I will die on the hill that it's already complete. The adaptations they're making, they're just a cherry on top. The comics are the cake. And I don't know about you, but I want the cake. Number 1. Apex Lex. Apex Lex, the name that I can't take seriously but love saying. So this is part of the latest Year of the Villain storyline over at DC, latest at the time of this recording, which is leading up to something big. Well, Lex has discovered the dark multiverse and its creator Perpetua, and the fact that according to her vision, villains are the destiny of the universe, so he feels that humans should become apex predators, hence Apex Lex. He fused himself with Martian DNA to do this, mileage varies on that part. So in his own Year of the Villain comic, he went across the multiverse, and can you guess it? What'd he do? Say it together, class. Killed the alternate versions of himself, except for one that he's keeping as a backup just in case. It's dark, and while Lex unbound from his thing with Clark is odd, I don't know. How do you feel about Apex Lex? I just want to say it again. Apex Lex.
Number 10. All the Robins. There's definitely a level of hate between all Robins due to the competitive edge. They're all working hard to impress Batman, and because of that, they all get competitive with each other, like a bunch of siblings vying for parental attention. It often quickly becomes about who is the best Robin, even when they are working together. The Robin War comic series has many moments of this, especially between Damien and all of the other Robins, as to be expected. Of course, this is also exacerbated for Damien by the fact that they're also dealing with a literal group of copycats who aspire to be like some version of Robin as well. And Teen Titans Go episode, Best Robin, highlights just how easy it is for the Bat family to devolve into petty feuds. Like any family, you can't have family love without a bit of family hate. Number 9. Catwoman and Black Canary. Despite these two both being members of the Birds of Prey in the Batman animated series, these two don't always see eye to eye. A lot of the interactions in comics involve them making snide remarks at one another. And in 2008 they actually fought, although the hate between them was fairly short-lived. It was still fairly humorous and real, as the two faced fighting for their own existence and the existence of the animals that they share their names with. In the Catwoman / Tweety and Sylvester crossover, Selena is fighting for the existence of all cats, while Dinah fights for the existence of all birds. The two battle across the city and are forced to recruit other team members to help them out. This also allows us to see fellow Teen Titans Starfire and Raven duke it out, as Starfire is descended from cats, apparently, while Raven is obviously representing birds, I suppose due to her name. Catwoman even calls Amanda Waller for backup. It's a pretty funny comic, you should read it. Number 8. Wolverine and Spider-Man. These two just seem to be polar opposites when it comes to their philosophy and attitude on life and crime fighting. Whenever the two are forced to team up, it usually ends in torture for one or both of them. Whether they are swapping bodies or getting sent back in time and forced to live with cavemen and dinosaurs, the two always struggle to see eye to eye and detest one another as a result. In Spider-Man vs. Wolverine out of the 80s, we even saw the two come to blows over their different philosophies. Wolverine was trying to help a friend who wanted to die by giving them a mercy killing, but was stopped from finishing the job by Spider-Man, who had come across the two and couldn't stand by, not understanding why Wolverine would kill his friend. The two fight and Spider-Man accidentally punches the very woman he was trying to save when she uses his spidey senses against him, sneaking up on him and causing him to punch her to death. Oh, comics. The only place where someone get one punch to death. Wolverine to the stomach and then one punch from Spider-Man, yeah, out. Number 7. Emma Frost and Professor X. Emma goes into Professor X's mind to make sure there is no trace of Mr. Sinister and no influence over Charles. In X-Men Legacy, Emma goes into Professor X's mind to make sure there is no trace of Mr. Sinister and no influence over Charles. She does this for Scott, as it is not a task she looks forward to. Charles doesn't even think she can manage it. Ooh, harsh. And yet, she does manage it, searching through Charles' memories and somewhat torturing him. She says she doesn't enjoy it, but she explicitly judges Charles while she does so, analyzing the way that they both see reality. The way Emma sees it, she's more of a grounded person, whereas Charles almost sees himself as more of a god or a guardian angel when it comes to the mutants he teaches. At least that's how Emma sees his perception of self. Although Cyclops often praises Emma as a teacher, to her she is actually only ever training students, and this divide between Emma and Charles causes the two to get in a pretty large fight while she is inside his mind. And although the two mutants can often remain civilized and respect one another, there is definitely some hatred bubbling under the surface. And it comes up in this comic, especially coming from Emma, as she doesn't really agree with Charles's treatment of Scott, the way that he raised him. You know what I mean. Number 6. Reed Richards and Namor. These two hate each other because of love. They both have feelings for Sue Storm, and although Reed Richards is actually married to her, Namor constantly feels like Richards does a terrible job of being a good partner, which for the most part is kind of true. But Sue loves Reed and won't leave him. Why? Well, we'll never really know that. Reed is definitely brilliant, but his brilliance often leads him into neglecting his wife and his family life. Namor describes their relationship best when he says, "You met her, you dated her a short time, then you accidentally gave her powers that forced her into your tower. That tower is a cage, created by you for her, but she has come to terms with it. She still loves you." The two can constantly be seen in the comics insulting one another and occasionally even fighting over Sue. Fighting over those ladies. Number 5. Misty Knight and Jessica Jones. Misty has never thought that Jessica was good enough for her friend Luke, and Jessica has never liked that Misty seems to dislike her for no good reason. As such, whenever these two are in a room together, things are bound to get pretty ugly. Even as early as the first issue of Jessica Jones Volume 1 Issue 1 from 2016, one of the first few pages actually shows Misty paying Jessica a visit after she has just got out of prison. The two immediately get in a fight, as Misty has obviously been sent by Luke to retrieve or check up on Luke and Jessica's daughter. Misty says that she has never liked Jessica on a subatomic level, and that she feels she has finally been proven right. The fight ends with Jessica dragging Misty out of her office. It's lucky Jessica didn't throw her through something, jeez, poor Misty. Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter. Miss Martian actually ends up killing Martian Manhunter. Okay, so no, No, not that Martian Manhunter. This version of Martian Manhunter is actually Miss Martian, but from 9 years in the future. The Teen Titans of the future have returned to the past to preserve the future they came from. The version of Miss Martian that returns has now adopted the mantle of Martian Manhunter, and wears the color of her true race with pride, choosing to appear white rather than green. Miss Martian isn't sure if she can trust her future self, but becomes intrigued with her when she notices her immunity to fire. When her future self prevents her from saving Robin, and her fire immunity is revealed to come not from her power as a white Martian, but from her future armor technology of some kind, she turns on this version of Martian Manhunter. Her future self berates Miss Martian's mind with visions of the future she has come from, filled with graphic images of violence, causing Miss Martian to snap and decapitate her future self. Woo! You know it's hate when it ends with decapitation. That's the border right there. Iron Man and Iron Man. I'm so sorry, but yes, we're going to the crossing for this one. In this Marvel event, it was revealed that Tony Stark was brainwashed by Kane a long time ago and was actually evil. Why he helped defeat Kane so many times, well, that never really made any sense or was explained. Just get ready to put logic on hold for this Marvel event. In order to defeat Iron Man, the Avengers came up with a brilliant idea of snagging his teen self from the past and putting him up against the current Iron Man. That actually only made evil Tony Stark more mad, unfortunately. He whooped his teen self's butt, and when he saw that arrogance in his younger self's eyes, he abhorred it, and he almost killed him. Tony said that his arrogance was what had led him down the path that he was at now, and even though he was evil now, he apparently had some self-loathing issues. Also, that one panel of young him being so happy to have older him dead, but then he feels remorse later, so it's fine. He cries later, he mourns himself. Number 2. Batman and Spawn. Batman runs into Spawn at kind of a bad time during their crossover comic. Spawn was in the process of sending some bad guys to hell, but to Batman, who was not privy to their misdeeds, it looked kinda like murder. His hatred of Spawn comes from the fact that he thinks he is undisciplined and a murderer, whereas Spawn's hatred of the Bat comes from the fact that he thinks he's kind of just a whiny rich kid who is also just a mortal. Even when the two come together to face the big bad in the comic, they still part on bad terms. Spawn asks Batman if they can bury the hatchet after their team up, and Batman answers by burying a batarang right in the middle of Spawn's face. I guess that's a no. Number 1. Iron Man and Black Widow. Going to the Ultimates universe again for this one. As I said in my previous video when I was talking about the Ultimates Black Widow, no one really likes her. And classifying her as a hero is, not really accurate, as she does turn out to be a traitor, but before that reveal we all actually thought that she was a hero. So I'm gonna count it. In the Ultimates, Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff become an item. The two even get engaged and plan to get married, which shocked a lot of people. But even more shocking was when it turned out that Natasha was betraying her friends, the Avengers and Tony. While the Liberators are invading, Natasha distracts Tony in the bedroom. But when he can hear the explosions from there, he insists they see what's going on and help out their friends. It's then that Natasha pulls a gun on him and reveals her true colors. Just then, Jarvis enters with breakfast and Black Widow shoots him in the head. Oh, Jarvis! Tony had gifted her own Iron Man suit for their wedding, but fortunately he still controls the nanites within her body that allow her to control the suit, and he uses his control over them to disable Black Widow, announcing that 5,000 failed relationships can make a man a little cynical. Yeah, that's a lot of failed relationships, so that makes sense.
Real number 10 is Damian Wayne and the Heretic. So Damian Wayne is the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul, and he's the latest Robin, and bratty in a way that readers will find endearing or obnoxious. He is also yet another Robin to temporarily bite the dust, and in a truly brutal fashion that just raised some questions as to just why we were being so brutal in the first place. Damien was literally skewered by a villain called the Heretic. It turned out though that the Heretic, wait for it, was a clone of him. So he was killed by his own hyper-aged clone, who has quite the complex about feeling like Talia likes Damien more than him. Cause, well, she does. The Heretic also died really brutally. He was decapitated and had a bomb planted on his spine. Why was this era of Batman so extra? Kebab Damien was a moment. Number 9. Reed and the Council of Reeds. You know, if I can put Reed on a list, I'll put Reed on a list. And well, he met multiple versions of himself when he discovered the Council of Reeds. So the Council of Reeds is exactly what it sounds like, an interdimensional council of Reed Richardses from across the universes, who have gathered together, drawn by the innate arrogance of all Reeds surrounding their intelligence, and that they just have the best plans for their worlds and actually the universe beyond it. This council actually started because of an odd cosmic occurrence where one man from multiple dimensions would be drawn into a Highlander-style prize fight from which there could be only one. However, it all came to a head when the one was Nathaniel Richards, the father of Reeds. This council was founded by 3 Reeds who all wielded Infinity Gauntlets, and when Prime vs. Reed met this council, at first he was all for it. But just like the Maker, most of these Reeds had sacrificed everything for power, so Reed found he was kind of an anomaly, having a family and friends and other responsibilities, and ultimately he found that he needed to separate himself from the council. This all happens in Hickman's Fantastic Four, which is an amazing run. You should all read it. It will make you love the Fantastic Four. Maybe. I don't know what you like. Number 8. Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go. That's right, I'm breaking the sacred oath of official nerddom and talking about Teen Titans Go and not in a negative light. Clearly, I just never had any taste and just go sit inside a box of shame. How dare I find joy in things others dislike? So Teen Titans Go is a satirical series parodying the early 2000s animated Teen Titans series that engendered much fan outrage for not being a continuation of the original series, despite having the same voice cast, having varied humor, some of it quite juvenile, also the more simplistic art style, and some took it as an insult to the original characters. Despite this, and I'll die on this hill, this show is its own thing and has merit, and not all the jokes are as lowbrow as you think. They also embrace the salt, and as a salt queen, that's right up my alley. Like this movie, where they meet the Titans that everybody wanted them to be. And yeah, it's full of the jokes people have been hurling at them for years. If you're a good sport and can laugh at beef like that, then this will be right up your alley. You can enjoy both. You don't have to pick a side, like we can all get along. But it's fine, unsub, I understand. I mean, people liking different things, disgusting. Number 7. Supergirl and Power Girl. Supergirl and Power Girl are an interesting case, cause how they came to be the same character is just a mess. So Kara was from Earth 2, this is Power Girl Kara, the Earth assigned to Golden Age characters. But by Crisis on Infinite Earths, this Earth was producing its own legacy characters, which was getting to be a bit confusing for readers. Now, Supergirl had been created much earlier than Power Girl, but had had a more nebulous and changing backstory for years, even though Power Girl would end up with her backstory. So what was it? Originally, Supergirl was the sole survivor of Argo City, and she was Superman's cousin. Okay, so we had 2 Supergirls, one on the Prime Earth and one on Earth 2, but then Crisis on Infinite Earths killed Supergirl but left Power Girl but retconned her to not being Kryptonian for a bit, so Superman could truly be the last son of Krypton. It was, in short, a mess. Supergirl and Power Girl have met on a few occasions, teamed up, fought, and it usually met with confusion. If you look up Supergirl, you'll find things like, does Supergirl become Power Girl? Still, the two tend to get along pretty well, but because of their designs, there are some jokes out there pondering why Power Girl is so, well, powerful, while Supergirl is not. Not to mention the contention over the boob window. I love a boob window, but that's just me. Number 6. Gambit and New Sun. Gambit is more powerful than many people are aware. He just chooses to charge playing cards. He can do a lot more. Some would even go so far as to say he's OP now. Case in point, New Sun. He's also called the Executioner, too, and he is from Earth 9923. So New Sun Gambit can't control his kinetic energy, or he couldn't for a bit after a ritual gone wrong, and it had flared out of control and he had destroyed his world. So he was traveling to alternate realities, killing other versions of himself so they couldn't destroy their worlds. Basically, it's the one with Jet Li. Never forget that movie, it's great. But New Sun would often find that he was too late, and Gambit had already destroyed the world. So when he got to 616 and met a not full potential Gambit, he hid himself from him and tried to get help to create a new world. But when he found he couldn't, he was like, well, better kill Gambit. This battle would burn Gambit out, and well, we're safe from another New Sun. For now. Number 5. Johnny Storm and Vanguard. Vanguard, or Guard, both will explain, is an alternate version of Johnny Storm from Earth A, who yes at first looked like a hockey player. So in this timeline, Johnny didn't go to space, he didn't go on the flight with his sister, and hence he didn't become the Human Torch. Instead, he was taken to another dimension after a wartime injury, and rebuilt by scientists, his body and mind, better, stronger, faster, guardier. He survived as a guardian of the nexus between worlds. He wasn't here for cross-dimensional shenanigans, which of course would bring him into conflict with the Fantastic Fantastic Four. During a war between the Earth 616, Earth 721, and the Fifth Dimension, the Thing would defeat Guard in a hockey-style shootout. He would then vanish into the void for a bit and become Vanguard, only to return convinced he needed to destroy redundant timelines. Why is that everyone's go-to? Still, when he encountered Johnny Storm and saw him flame off and saw that they were the same person, well, it changed him and he realized he could be better too. He decided to help timelines find closure instead. Hooray! Number 4. Donna Troy meets Evil Donna. Hi Donna of the many origins. Rebirth saw her meeting an evil version of herself. Poor Donna, her whole genesis is such a mess. So Donna is leading the Titans now at the time of this recording, while Dick Grayson is Rick Grayson. He's angry and doesn't want anything to do with the Bat Fam. So Jason, Rick, he's just so distinct, totally worth it, cause now people won't make dick jokes anymore. That's a great trade-off for assassinating a character. That's one status quo I can't wait to see reset. If they leave that permanent, there aren't enough tables in the world for me to flip. Anyway, Donna, she fights Troya, which is another name she had from way back before the New 52 when her origin was first retconned. That is after she got one. This new origin was her being saved by the Titans, so it had nothing to do with Wonder Woman, so she changed her name from Wonder Girl to Troya. So Troya has been alive for 1400 years and wants to kill the Titans to spare herself from the dreary, painful future she now inhabits. This issue is cool. Donna uses a lasso of truth on her, learns her history, and Troya is all, join me. Together we can destroy this timeline. Of course. Donna in Rebirth is solid. Just leave her alone. Oh wait. Infected. Never mind. Number 3. Captain Marvel and the Reality Stone. So Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, pre-official villainous Bend, found herself in possession of the Reality Stone, or gem, depends on how much the comic wants to tie into the MCU. In the story Dark Origins, Carol was transported to an alternate universe where she was a supervillain. I know, I can hear you. Your jokes are already pouring in. Insert your she was already evil jokes down below. She ended up using the Reality Stone to get home, and in the process saw all the other versions of herself out there, and the paneling is really cool. Now Captain Marvel is having a villain arc at the time of this recording, and I just love the costume. It's a good look, and I'm always a sucker for the eye makeup gone messy just all over the face. It says I still care but in an abstract way, and you're all too scared of me to say anything except yeah, it looks lit fam. Excellent. Number 2. Hulk and Maestro. I always want to put so much emphasis on it. Maestro. So Maestro is an alternate version of the Hulk from the future who possesses an increased intelligence but also so much rage. So the Hulk will be brought forward in time. This was Professor Hulk to beat Maestro, who had an ironclad grip on the world, and a group of rebels would bring forward the Hulk, and he would find defeating Maestro pretty much impossible. Maestro knows his plans and is seemingly stronger. The Hulk actually has to take him back in time to the gamma explosion that created him to take him out. Yet he lives in fear that this is what he could become. Still better than, in my opinion, the incest Hulk from Old Man Logan. Gross. I like how with Gamma you can just do what you want. Oh, it will make him super smart, or oh, it made him go insane. Both valid. Number 1. Batman Dark Knight's Metal. That's right, it's the Dark Knight's Metal event, where alternate Batman from the dark multiverse emerged. So let's talk about the breakout. The Batman Who Laughs from Earth -22, a world where Batman had become the Joker, essentially, after he snapped the Joker's neck and inhaled some of the toxins from his body and transformed. He would go on to haunt Bruce from the main Earth with what he could become. So Batman actually had to team up with the Joker to take him down. Apparently the one eventuality that the Batman Who Laughs couldn't foresee? Why? Joker and Batman talk. Batman visits him in Arkham. They have teamed up before. In what world is this unforeseen? Still, that's what it takes. Now the effects of the Batman Who Laughs are still being felt at the time of this recording, as he infected people within the universe, and it was supposed to be a secret, but now we just know because we all have access to way more info than we used to. Still, this was one epic time that a main verse person met their alternate. Number 10. Black Widow and the Invisible Woman. Starting off our list with something new and mild from the Invisible Woman solo series. This recasts her past as a secret agent. So before she married Reed, she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and ran covert ops, which with her power set actually makes a lot of sense. The story thus far is that her past partner has gone missing and she's gonna break all the rules to go behind enemy lines to find him. This involves her teaming up with Black Widow, who suddenly has a massive chip on her shoulder about superheroes. So Sue has to prove herself to her. She has to prove that she's not like other superheroes. Natasha, are you okay? You've been on so many superhero teams. I know you're a clone, but you have all the memories of the other Nat, who Hydra Cap killed. So these two just have beef until Sue proves herself to her by faking a drinking contest. So it's low, because it's not full hate or sustained, but it's odd. This is a 5-issue mini, by the way. It's pretty good. Check it out if you have the time. This is manufactured conflict. Manufactured conflict is manufactured. Does Nat not remember the time Sue fought the entire Avengers team to a standstill after the government took her kids and forced them out of the Baxter building? Reed's just noped out of that. He knows better than to try and stop an angry Sue. Number 9. Hal Jordan and Batman. So Green Lantern and Batman and since they started teaming up in the late Silver Age, Brave and the Bold, there has been friction. Batman has never fully appreciated Hal's attitude, which ranges from cavalier to I'm doing exactly what the Guardians tell me. But this really came to a head when Hal went evil. And also there's some beef from Hal's side from the time he was desperate enough to go to Bruce for help with his alcoholism and just got turned away. Post-Parallax, Bruce wanted nothing to do with Spectre Hal and didn't trust him at all. And when he came back to life, he still didn't trust him and then got extra mad because everybody judged him for it. But honestly, he had good reason. Just because all the people you killed came back to life doesn't mean you didn't kill them in the first place. Eventually these two would find an even keel through an, in my opinion, contrived sequence where Bruce couldn't handle a power ring despite having wielded one multiple times before. All of this ended up being shifted more into frenemy mode in the New 52, where all of a sudden these two were all about each other. Bruce revealed his identity on purpose to Hal first, he lets Hal fly him places. I don't know, I have questions. I notice things. Other people are like, oh, where's Darkseid? And I'm like, is Hal's hand around Bruce's waist? Enhance image. No shame in my game. We all make our own fun. Number 8. Hawkman and Green Arrow. So Carter Hall and Oliver Queen hate each other for the same reason that Hal and Ollie should hate each other, but the comics insist they don't. A fundamental difference of opinion. Green Arrow leans really left, to the point where he just yells at Hal, for example, for being a space cop and for listening to the Guardians, ever. He just yells at him and calls him stupid and a stick in the mud, all kinds of things, but they're best friends? Like, what is going on with Hal's self-esteem? You don't have to take that. Anyway, Hawkman leans more right. These terminologies are stateside ones, by the way. These terms mean different things depending upon where you are in the world. So these two butt heads, or they did pre-Flashpoint. Post-Flashpoint in the New 52, except we mostly forget this was a thing. These two used to have some huge blow-up arguments. It's mostly been forgotten because of the struggle of what do we do with these characters in the first place. Just never forget, Oliver Queen will scream in your face if you have a different opinion than him on social issues, but when push comes to shove and he finds out his ward is a drug addict, he will slap him across the face and kick him out. So, all talk, huh? Number 7. Jean Grey and Emma Frost. This comes to us from New X-Men, the Grant Morrison run. And the genesis of this one, we've talked about it numerous times at this point. Jean and Cyclops were having problems. Emma, fresh off surviving the Genoshan genocide, started giving him psychic therapy. During this point, the two started having a psychic affair, an affair where she would masquerade as Jean as the Phoenix. It was all kinda messed up. So when Jean found out about all this, she was understandably upset. Less understandably, she psychically tortured Emma because of it. When Jean lets her powers go, she's terrifying. Full stop. Anybody who questions how she uses them has a long history to call back upon. This conflict would be solved through plot convenience. Jean would just kinda become the Phoenix and poof away. Now that description will bother some people who really felt the gravitas of her sacrifice, but different strokes for different folks. Maybe I'm Zorn. I was Zorn the whole time. Who wasn't Zorn but was Zorn. Number 6. Captain Marvel and Iron Man. This is Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, who is currently having a villain arc in the comics at the time of this recording. A purposeful one, not one by accident. And it's a good play. Lean into it. Play with it, that's smart marketing. Anyway, despite years of friendship, her and Tony fell through over Minority Report. I mean, an Inhuman, Ulysses, who could tell the future. And when Rhodey died as a driving plot force, who was dating Carol at the time, it was on. She felt she could have prevented it if she knew the future. Tony was all, I don't agree. Also, I was the antagonist in the last Civil War. It's not a good look, don't do it. She was all, screw you. I'm starting a teenage Gestapo and getting several people killed. Get ready to be beaten into a coma, Care Bear. He calls her Care Bear, so I'm flipping it back. Yeah, this was intense. The Civil War arcs go hard. You go from fighting alongside someone to contemplating murdering them. However, unlike the first Civil War, they scramble to undo any lasting character damage, so Tony just got over it. I built myself a new body, it's fine. Number 5. Namor and Black Panther. Two kings fighting over whose kingdom is better and who should have mastery. Also, they just really clash personality-wise. It takes a decent amount of ego to rule, and T'Challa handles his with more grace than Namor, who can at times fall into megalomania and just slips into straight-up villainy sometimes too. Still, these two can also respect each other. You can make their relationship fairly malleable. But well, they've fought for decades, and fans have a very let them fight mentality, alongside a who would win. Black Panther stabbed Namor that one time. Namor's been killed a few times actually. Beheaded by Hyperion once. Ouch. Number 4. Batman and the Red Hood. So this is a more one-sided hate, as when Jason Todd came back to life, Batman's feelings were very conflicted, but Jason had had years to nurse his hate, a festering rage that had started long before he died, exacerbated by seeing that his death had changed nothing in Bruce's methods, that he'd been replaced by another Robin, that the Joker still lived. Red Hood was more than happy to kill to accomplish what he felt Batman could not, and go up against the rest of the Bat family. It made him dangerous, as did the fact that Bruce still cared about him. Batman doesn't do feelings the best though, so the anger eventually manifested mutually. These days Jason is in more of a black sheep capacity, but these two still aren't good. Batman backhanded him that one time in Rebirth. Just why do people keep having him do that? Stop it. Number 3. Hawkeye and the Swordsman. Yeah, classic beef. So Hawkeye was a villain before he eventually had a change of heart. Now the Swordsman actually started off as a villain for Hawkeye. He had actually trained Hawkeye when the two were both villains. At that point he was called Trickshot, which is a better name. So when the Swordsman wanted to join the Avengers, obviously Clint didn't trust him and kept a close eye on him, which led to him being denied entry, which then led to him kidnapping Captain America. So yeah, hate justified. The Swordsman has been on the Avengers since though, so I guess he got what he wanted. Number 2. Reed Richards and Thor. So this occurred during the first Civil War, Civil War I. Thor was dead at this point, and so the pro-registration side felt that they needed something on their side, a big heavy hitter, some brawn. They needed some muscle. The Hulk was in space, kept there by them. This is leading up to Planet Hulk. So Reed thought, what if we just clone Thor? I have the tech, I have the DNA, I can do anything really. And Tony was like, yeah, go for it. This is why we're such good friends. Needless to say, when Thor found out about all this, he wasn't happy. He was furious. This messed up their relationship for a while, and justifiably so. Stop cloning people. Most people don't want to be cloned. Bad blood. Also, Thor didn't even want to be on that side, so double blow. Civil War, what a time, both times. I can't wait for Civil War 3. Number 1. She-Hulk and Star Fox. So She-Hulk hates Star Fox for a couple of reasons, like influencing her emotions and making her believe she was in love with John Jameson, Werewolf Jameson, and so she married him. She found this out while she was trying to discover if Star Fox had used his powers on her to make her sleep with him. This was while she was defending him for his other rapes that he had committed canonically because Thanos implanted memories in him that made him doubt himself, but not even the real Thanos. It was not the strongest plot. Jen is justifiably angry about all of this, but also at herself because he didn't influence her in the defending of him or the sleeping with him department. She changed her whole life after finding out about her and John though. She divorced John. It hurt how she could perceive her own thoughts. I hate him too. Cupid powers showcased in the grossest way. This is the plot that for many ruins Star Fox, while others are like, it's the writer's fault, not Star Fox. Share your thoughts.